Hello, everyone. Welcome to the platform for Inspired Learners. My name is Adolf, and I'll be your host. Today, we have a presentation from Dr. Adolf Mihanjo. He's going to present something to do with African phenomenology of mind, but also is going to try to connect this with economic development, but as well as the structure of the mind in general. What's the doctor trying to say here? We're going to hear from him, and so I'm going to introduce him so that we can hear the presentation. But before that, let's introduce ourselves at least by one name, and that is one of your host.
I am Erika Minoro. I'm Mihanjo.
And the doctor himself. So now may I invite you, doctor, so we can dive to the discussion that I was. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for this session. My topic, as I said, that the phenomenology of African mind. This topic, I am trying to relate the structure of the mind in relation to economic development. In trying to develop this topic, I am appealing to three major thinkers, but particularly to feature and sharing. But here and there, I also pull into some other thinkers in order to reinforce the point and to establish the connection or the connectivity between the phenomenology of the mind in general and the economic development. How does it relate? The German philosopher known as Fichte, in his philosophy, developed the theory of the knowledge of the ego, or the I, or the self. And in this, in his book known as The Science of All Knowledge, Fichte asserts that all knowledge are germinating or coming from the self. He equates the self with the I, or the pure ego. The I, or the self, is the starting point or the foundation of all knowledge. And he says that the I posts itself, the known I. In posting itself, the known I, it is posting nature. The I posts itself to a known I, or not I. So the I is an subject, the not I is an object. But the object is the production of the subject. And the object that the subject produces, it is a manifestation of the capacity of the subject. Means that it flows out of the subject. It is the identity of the subject. So the object is the extension of the subject. And the object and the subject, the I, are almost the same. He goes on saying that the I is not a passive recipient of experience. It engages that experience in trying to understand, trying to recreate those experiences, and producing something new out of that experience. But the bottom line of it is the I has two qualities: activity and freedom. It is in those activity and freedom the I tries to understand itself. Who am I? Who am I not? And that understanding, who am I not, is realized when it posts itself, when it posts the object. That object is the identity of the subject. Then from there, he goes on to define consciousness. Consciousness is in the realization of the self. What is the realization of the self? When you know who am I, you also know who am I not. When you know who am I not, you know also what are my possibilities and what are those those are my possibilities and what are those things that I cannot, are not possible. It is then the I expresses itself its own consciousness of reality by posting itself what is in her or in him. And from that argument, we draw the fact that reality is constructed. It's constructed by the mind. The mind, the spirit, constructs reality. And it's the spirit, the mind, becomes the organizing principle, the mind. The second one I went to is Shelley. Shelley developed the philosophy of nature. And it spoke about the unity of nature in two things. In nature itself and the mind. Nature is the visible spirit. Spirit is the invisible nature. This means that nature is not an innate matter, not an innate matter. Innate matter. It's a dynamic reality. It is a self-organizing activity that moves forward. And what organizes that is the spirit. But in nature, there is nature envelops the spirit. And the spirit becomes an organizing principle of nature. I would recall back to the philosophy, metaphysics, quantity and quality organizes matter. As quantity or quality organizes material, it gives a matter a specific existence. Let me reinforce this point to the analogy of the architecture. Everyone will agree that it is in the essential form of the mind of the architecture lies the structure of the house. So the structure of the house is already in the mind of the architecture. In the mind of the architect conceives the house, how the house is going to be, how it's going this way, this way. The whole structure. Now, the house we see there is the extension of the mind of the architect. We would say that the existential house is the expression of the invisible spirit, the mind. But the mind, this spirit also, is the invisible of nature. Nature. So in these relations, mind becomes the organizing principle that directs the end, what to be and how to be. Sharing said the highest expression of the unity between the mind and the spirit and nature is the art, the works of art. In art, embrace the unity of the spirit and the nature. Look at this. How would you explain technology? What is technology? Technology actually is the extension of the human mind. Extension of the creative and organizing human mind. Here you have technology. God has given us nature, but not in the unit of self. Nature that we see in experience, has parts. In creating a plane, one has to organize certain parts of nature in order to assemble together to come with one plane. So a plane is a result of the power, the critical power of the mind of that person, the organizing power of that person, the analytical power of that person, and synthetic power of that person. And that plane carries the identity, carries the specification of him, who he is, as against who he is not. Look at artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, how do you explain artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is the extension of the human mind, the creative capacity of the human mind, the creative power of the human mind. Then you have this. So the extension of that mind is what we call it. We call it artificial intelligence. If that's the case, what we then conclude? We'll conclude that as the economy involves the useful good, it involves the capacity to assemble, the capacity to analyze nature, the capacity to organize nature for the useful good. When you have not that capacity to organize nature, to synthesize nature, to analyze nature, nature is seen as it is, and you are only one with nature as it is. You are not capable of manipulating nature. But what makes it to be not capable is the power of the spirit. The spirit has low capacity to analyze, synthesize, and organize nature for something else. The Greek says that economy is the heart of house management. Economy is the heart of house management. The issue is this: what makes that capacity of the house management? That the house management made itself, or it's the mind that manages the house management? Automatically, you would say that the mind manages the house management. It's not the house manages itself, but it's the mind that manages the house management. But what would you say about house management? It is, to my understanding, it is a capacity of organizing, capacity of organizing material goods for the well-being of your people, for the well-being of the house. Now, where does this capacity come from? This capacity comes from the mind, the power of the mind. It is the visionary of the mind that makes it possible do such things. Everybody wonders. Africa, it has a lot of potential for economic development. Why not? Why they are still poor? Where do we throw the blame? One of those blames which has been there coming always, that we were colonized. It's true, we were colonized. No one denies that. But we are not the only ones who are colonized in the world. The Americans were colonized by the British. The Indians were colonized by the British. And even the Chinese, but the Japanese. But why are they willing to go forward? But even if you leave alone these examples, I think a psychologist, Harvard, who developed stimulus response psychology, is developed on the condition psychology. When a dog, you are used to ring a bell at a particular time. And when you ring that bell, you give a dog food. A dog will always assume that any time the bell is ringing, I'm going to get food. And he will draw saliva, being ready to receive food. Are we like dogs? Being conditioned? Are we not capable to transcend, to go beyond the conditioning? If that's not, what's the freedom then? What's the very freedom that God granted to us? If not, what's the value of self-determination? God granted to us. So that remains a question to be answered. But the other one, leaving aside this one, it's also another claim. Our environment has made me that way. We had all those things that we have, those things in life. There were no harsh conditioning that made us to think differently. It's true when you speak about the empirical epistemology, that experience also makes you to think the way the reality is. But if that's true, if that's totally true, then you would assume that those who are born in a desert countries and nothing is there, they remain poor forever. Nothing is there. So the environment being that way, and they cannot move forward from there. The definition of reason is the movement from what is known to what is not known. What is seen here isn't here, to what is not experienced. It is a linear motion. Against that linear motion is a cycle. People are not able to move forward and they remain cycling in the same sphere. The African economy is a cycling economy. Cyclical economy. But how do you explain that cyclical economy? I have no other expression rather saying that it's incapacity to comprehend nature. In conclusion, the African poverty starts with it is an ontological poverty. The poverty of the mind. The ontological poverty that is expressed, that extends into physical poverty. Unless we solve the ontological poverty, we're not able to solve the physical poverty. At the end, what can we do now? We have, in whatever way we could, to develop critical and creative mind. Critical and creative mind that will be capable to analyze and to synthesize nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor, for that presentation. We shall be coming to the points you mentioned from the way you derived your presentation. So provoking, and I think questions will get direct to the point, specifically as the title is structured. I'm trying to recall the title as the African phenomenology of the mind, and the thing that Africa economic development and the structure of the mind. All right. Maybe for the sentence you last finished with on ontological poverty as the actual kind of statement of the type of poverty in Africa as the kind of ontological poverty that extends to physical poverty. And the way you began your presentations with people like Schelling, Fichte, Schelling, these German philosophers, it seems as if metaphysically things first exist in the mind and then in the physical reality. Now, maybe to begin with this, from the way the title is structured, with the word structure of the mind, and the African phenomenology of the mind, then economic development. Now, how is this ontology situated? Is this the problem of an African mind? That's the African mind is ontologically poor like that? The African mind, no, maybe to put it straight, do you want to say the African mind is ontologically poor? Welcome.
Yes, when I mean ontological poverty, what is poverty? Poverty is the absence, when we talk essentially, the absence of material progress, the poverty. But we can also have a secondary definition or related definition, not very much, but they can be analogically related, I tend to be spiritual poverty. But both the absence of progression. Spiritual poverty, the absence of growth, progression in spiritual. Maybe I would define maybe what is spiritual. I'm not meaning God. The progress of the mind, the progress of the intellect, led by the consciousness of contradiction. The I producing the non-I, then having the unity of this one. But within that, from the very understanding that the mind is actually free, and also is an activity. So it's the one which actually unify, and synthesize those experiences. So poverty, now, when I talk ontological poverty, I mean the low capacity to comprehend issues, the low capacity to synthesize issues, at the end to produce, the low capacity to move from what is known to what's not known. That called a creative capacity.
Thank you. Perhaps we shall need more on that. Now, may I help another so that we can dive into another aspect or still capture that one. So, anyone, please, want to join? Maybe Brother Ruben, you joined us just recently, or anyone else. The psychologist beside me. You want to start?
Thank you, Doctor, for your wonderful presentations like last about the ontological powers. I wish to know what is the cause of it in Africa, what made it to be like in the coming to existence that people cannot think more about and they remain like undermined, not thinking, developing themselves. What is the causes of these ontological powers that you
I do think one of it is nurturing the scapegoating argument. People do not want to take responsibility for their own inability to think. Whenever you talk about that, people reject, but they yet know. How would you explain the fact that you have everything, but you depend on the help, not to run your house? Run your house, depend on your help. How do you explain that? So one of the scapegoating arguments, that's what we say, colonialism. The other scapegoating argument, but this is a very easy argument, reality. The other scapegoating argument, the environment. But the other scapegoating argument, the phobia to confront the self. It's easy to talk about the others, but it's difficult to talk about yourself. So phobia to confront the self. When we have these things, we nurture laziness. We nurture as if that we see things, they're happening, but we don't want to discuss about it because they touch ourselves. Every society in history have passed colonization. Every society in history have passed the first stage of life. That is the theological stage. That people living together by the mystical force of the ancestors. People passing that one. But others have been able to jump from it to move from which others have not been able to that. But even those who have not been able, they have not asked the fundamental question, why are we not being able? They are always jumping to escape scapegoating. Why do they jump that? Maybe they think to discuss about ourselves we look inferior. But unless you know yourself, you will not know who you are and you are not. You will not be able to force it yourself. You have to do your identity. You will not be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, thank you for the presentation, but you did post something like sometime you mentioned that nature is dynamic, and that confuses me. Is that nature is dynamic, or human beings are trying to evolve gradually so that we fit in nature? The reason why I am asking is that since then, we have been having the same environment, except people have developed different and varieties of things so that they can fit in. So which is which? Is it nature is dynamic, or human beings are evolving gradually to fit in the environment?
Yeah, I think let's look at this. Look at this. We get rain. We get rain maybe I get rain from December until January. We then will expect that we get rain from until January. But what happens when something rain does not come into January, December? It goes until maybe September, rain goes. So I am not designed to fit into them. But nature is provoked because it's kind of dynamism. What happens when the sea is cool? Not cool, I mean that there's no storms. All of a sudden, find a lot of storms there, coming storms. I'm not trying to fit into those storms, but it's just showing to me that you will not expect always that sea to be the way it is, but become different. But what has led to be different seems that there is energy. There's energy within that nature. Energy that is striving. It is striving that nature to make change. To make change. Now, what's that energy? Here I'm talking about human, but look like this. What's driving that? That energy. You have the mount there, mount that is static there. But at a particular time, it may erupt out. It just to come to this. Why is it happening this way? But then you ask the question, what made this mountain to erupt like this? Maybe there is tectonic forces behind that one that has made this mountain to erupt. In that sense, you create a possibility that when I see that mountain that way, it's possible that I will not see the mountain in that way. It will go down. That's what we mean. Nature is dynamic. But within what makes that dynamism possible? Is that dynamism possible? Of course, if you call to philosophy of this Aristotle, the finality, the intention of the creator of that one. progress brings to the dynamism. But the mind of that one, the mind of God is enveloped, is within that mountain. Within that mountain. So our work is to understand the way we strive to understand the nature of the mountain. That's the way we also come to understand God Himself. Because the mind is enveloped.
So, thank you, Dr. Mihanjo, for the presentation. I have one question of course. You said that the African poverty is an extension
Material poverty, physical poverty.
physical poverty is an extension of ontological
Poverty.
poverty. Perhaps you're claiming that the poverty that is exhibited out there in African context is an extension of the poverty.
The structure of the mind.
Is an extension of the poverty of an African's mind.
Yes. Structure of the mind.
Now, my question is there. Poverty, ontological poverty. Does that mean that we Africans, compared to our minds or in our minds compared to others? Or does ontological poverty mean that there is nothing lacking in our minds, in that we have fruitful, we have strongly capacitated abilities, just as any other person. However, what is different here is the shortage or inadequacy of the exercising of that potential. Let me phrase it this way. Does it mean our mind is innately lacking? Or what's the difference there is simply that our minds have not been subjected to enough exercising such that the huge capacities that we have could be translated into actuality, enough to solve the many problems that are yet to be solved.
Yes. If you answer that innate, then you have to blame God. Ask the question of God. Why God has created Africans with attitude? And that will be just predestination that God has created you to be in that way. It could be, but that could be an answer that requires a lot of explanation, if that would be the answer. Aristotle defined man is a rational being. In defining man is a rational being, it only defined a potency, only a capacity. He has a capacity to move the known to the unknown. But that capacity implies the capacity to analyze and the capacity to synthesize things. That capacity has to be nurtured. If it has not been nurtured, remain there. That capacity remains dormant. No progress. Remains dormant. That's what I mean perfect. Capacity remains dormant, not programmed.
Yeah.
Now, we have to define method of nurturing that capacity. Make that capacity develop. That capacity grow. What makes us not be able to nurture that capacity, make that capacity grow, is the adaptation of scapegoating argument. There's a scapegoating argument. Those scapegoating arguments appeases us. We have a kind of psychological appeasement. It makes a psychological appeasement. Not to engage the method, how we can get out of it. And the method, to engage the method, what we get out of it, is within our own capacity. But we don't do so because of that kind of scapegoating argument.
Yeah, so in other words, if somebody listens to you and asks you or asks any one of us here, so what is wrong with the African mind? The right answer would be, there is nothing wrong with the capacity to listen. We all have that capacity to listen. However, it's a capacity. It's a capacity, which means it's not enough to have a capacity. The capacity ought to be nurtured.
But the capacity means that a potency.
Yes, it ought to be nurtured.
It not to become act.
Right. It has to pass through sort of a furnace, a purifying fire, so as it could adapt its new form. A form which will be able to perform what is needed to emancipate oneself from poverty. No, so after that new form, it is possible that we can have people, Africans, who have a capacity to organize, a capacity to analyze, and a capacity to synthesize. And if that is done properly, and I believe there are some Africans who actually do that, if at all we do have very economically strong individuals in Africa, then we could say that it's not all Africans that have a capacity, that have that dormant capacity. Rather, it is some of them that have that.
Okay, to answer to you that, as I said, that identity is the production. Identity, capacity is to be realized. We may claim that we have those who are capable to do that. But capacity, your identity, I will say that, the I posts the non-I. And the non-I is the identity of the I. The I. So, if people, we have the capacity, if it is true, not yet realized. If it were there, there were people who have come with a new form of addressing African form. But and then working. And then working, if we have done. And then working. Not really addressing. Come to organizing that this becomes something new. Something new. And the working one. We may have, yes, but only maybe in its capacity. It is the intrinsic capacity. It may be there. But we have not seen extrinsic capacity. That comes in the form of reality there.
Yeah, but when you say that, Doctor, we haven't seen explicit capacity, because I'm following the logic here
Yeah.
that you're presenting. You're saying that essentially to be known as an individual that is in a level of economic excellency, let us see out there what you have done out there. Because what is out there is an extension of your mind's capacity to organize, analyze, and synthesize. Now, if that is the idea, well, literature shows us that there are individual Africans that have been able to really, for years now, build empires, world empires that have been able to stand. We have people in Nigeria, we have some, even here in the region of East Africa, where they've been able to lead companies for a very long time, being able to employ people for a very long time, and things are working for them. But my danger, the danger here that I'm sensing is that if at all we try to conclude the discussion such that it is a universal state, it is a universal status that Africans have generally not been able to actuate that capacity, I think we'll be going contrary to what reality shows. Because we have some individuals in Africa that have been able to manifest that. And if at all they've been able to produce something out there, and as you say, what is out there, if at all it's working, then it's a manifestation of the organization
Yes,
side.
I understand that kind of argument. We are talking about Mansa Kanka. We are talking about the historical of those things. But in every stage, there is in human, there is a kind of development. I'm telling you progression moving forwards. There's a certain stage whereby those people who were living by a stone age, those who discovered, maybe they see that warming themselves, they discovered fire. That would be development also. And I don't think this was only to the Africans that were in a stage of human being trying to strive towards responding to nature.
2 minutes, please.
2
minutes.
Hello?
A minute, maybe. Try to respond.
Responding to nature. But how would you explain the phenomenon that you have everything, you have almost everything, but yet you are poor? At the same time, you claim that your people are capable. Why don't they give you a solution to get out of it?
A possible response could be that now here you are measuring now two sides. How heavy are these two sides? If at all the strong-armed, economically emancipated individuals are lesser compared to the majority, it is possible that in the final analysis, it would seem as though even if there might be glimpses of development, then those glimpses are likely to be outshone by the intensity of the poverty that still remains. Now, the poverty that still remains, what are the causes? I do agree with what you mentioned here, the phobias, and the scapegoating theory that you embrace and all that. Of course, that could be a very effective way of pinning down Africans into a state of poverty. But that does not really mean that there's some few individuals that have really seen the light and they're working towards that, employing so many people, emancipating their areas in which they're in, etc.
But to answer finally, if you go to the Greek, it's that the economy is the art of house management. What does it mean by house management? It's not the individual management, the house. The house management. In this sense, we can extend to a country management. It's the house. It's the house. It's possible you may have one individual having economic power, maybe still through stealing, possible. Maybe still amassing corruption is possible. That's not the issue. It's possible and stealing is possible. You may have people who have a lot of money, through manipulating others. When we talk about the art of house management, let's say the art of national management, how do you manage the life of your people? You cannot say that you have the capacity for house management when you need a neighbor to help you manage your house.
Sorry, Doctor. Let us start something as we draw to conclusion.
I wanted to ask a question on top because the doctor has said it's true that we have been colonized like some years ago, but then you also mentioned the causes of why the African minds are the way you think they are. Then, what are some possible interventions that you would suggest that would help elevate the situation?
To design a proper method, nurture creative mind, critical thinking, a mind that can be able to create possibilities, a mind that has the capacity to move from the known to the unknown. A mind that has an artistic mind. My technology is an artistic mind. To produce an artistic mind, a mind that can produce things, a mind that can produce not all the things that we know, the things that are not known, but they are new.
Then I'm trying to proceed this.
Sorry, because of time. We shall continue with the discussion even outside. But maybe to be fair to our people whom we promised that our presentation also be in Kiswahili somehow in English and Kiswahili. Maybe can you summarize this theme in Kiswahili? Unawezaje ukafupisha tulichoongea leo hapa, kwanza kwa kichwa cha mada title kwa Kiswahili, alafu theme yenyewe kwa Kiswahili, hasa hiyo sehemu ya ambayo imeleta mkanganyiko zaidi ya ontological poverty. Ontological poverty extends to physical poverty and is the reality of Africa. Unawezaje ukaweka kwa Kiswahili na tukamaliza kwa style hii?
Mfumo wa akili unajidhihirisha kwenye mfumo wa vitendo. Mfumo wa akili unajidhihirisha kwenye mfumo wa vitendo.
Kichwa title.
Nasema phenomenology of the mind, shughuli ya akili. utendaji wa akili. Utendaji wa akili uko kwenye mfumo wa akili, na ule mfumo wa akili unajionyesha. Hakuna mtu ambaye ameingia kwenye akili ya mtu. Tunatambua akili yako kutoka na kile unachokizalisha kutoka kwenye. Kwa hiyo utambulisho wa akili yako, utambulisho wa uwezo wako upo kwenye kile ambacho unakifanya, na kile ambacho unakifanya ndicho kinatoa utambulisho wako, identity yako, na ndicho kinatoa thamani yako.
Asante.
Kwa uchumi kama ni tendo la akili ambalo linafikiriwa kwanza kichwani, linatengenezwa kwanza kichwani, halafu inakuja kuonekana kwenye matendo ya maisha ya watu. Na katika tafsiri ya Wagiriki uchumi ni sanaa. Nini maana ya sanaa? Sanaa ni ule uwezo wa wewe kuunda kitu, kutengeneza kitu kipya, creativity, ubunifu. Sasa ni sanaa ambayo inakuwezesha wewe kujaribu kuendesha nyumba yako, sio kuendesha mtu, watu wenye nyumba yako, na kwa maana hiyo kuendesha nchi yako. Sasa kama nchi yako haiwezi kuendeshwa, nini maana kuendesha nchi yako? Maana kwamba wewe huwezi kutegemea. Kama unategemea 50% ya maisha yako kutoka misaada, maana uwezo kujiendesha nyumba yako, uwezo kuendesha nyumba yako haipo. Si nyumba yako haipo. Wewe unategemea mtu fulani akuendeshe, akusaidie kuendesha nyumba yako. Hii ina maana gani? Na mbaya zaidi, kama una kila kitu ambacho unaweza kuendesha nyumba yako, lakini huwezi kutumia kuendesha nyumba yako. Hapo kauliza swali kwamba kuna baadhi ya watu wanaweza wakawa katika nyumba yako wanajitosheleza kiuchumi, wana kila kitu na nini, lakini kama katika nyumba yako watu kama wanajitosheleza, swali linakuja, wamejitosheleza vipi? Wanajitosheleza kwa mbinu zipi? Kwa mbinu za kisanaa. Inawezekana katika nyumba fulani kukadharisha mtu anayejua kutengeneza gari, anayejua kutengeneza ndege. Sasa anajua kutengeneza ndege, anapata hela kwa kutengeneza ndege, sio? Sasa ile imekuwa na identity yake, ni sanaa ile amepewa vile. Sasa ile inaweza kuwa na identity yake.
Asante daktari.
Yeye binafsi. Lakini nyumba bado ina shida.
Ile jumuiya bado, jumuiko ule bado una shida, kama si kama sema. Sawa daktari, tumekuelewa idea yako. Tunaweza kuendelea of course imechokoza kufikiria na kuamka na hisia kwamba hapana, hii haiwezekani. Nadhani ni nzuri kwa kuamsha akili na namna ya kufikiria, namna ambavyo tunachukulia mambo. So nichukue wasahau kuwashukuru. Thank you very much for attending. Hope it's an interesting topic for all listeners. Tutaendelea kukutana njiani hapa na pale, lakini pia tutasikiliza maoni ya watu kama wanataka irudiwe tena vizuri kwa sababu imegusa mambo fulani msingi ambayo yanachokoza sana. hasa utambulisho wa Afrika, uchumi wa Afrika na uwezo hasa wa mfumo wa akili kidogo. Na ukishagusia mfumo wa akili umegusa CPU, umegusa kila kitu. Sasa basi nadhani pengine tutairudia hii mada au tutaona jinsi ya kuendelea zaidi. Basi thank you very much and may we clap for the presenter and